Raphael Varane, or Adam Webster?
Webster all day.
Football media in the UK, you're going to have a love-hate relationship with it. There's so much innovation, creativity, knowledge in it, but there's also such a toxic culture. Part 1, Football Twitter. If you're unaware of what Football Twitter is, search up the show Are You Smarter Than a 10-Year-Old with Noel Edmonds in from the 2000s, and that pretty much sums it up. It's basically a breeding ground of ridiculous arguments, stupid comparisons, boring debates, Scholes, Lampard, Gerrard, Foden, Saka, all of them lot, and not much really gets agreed on around there. And that's being a bit harsh, because I do like a lot of what Football Twitter is. There's arguments, there's good debates where you see them sometimes. People are introducing new players, people talk to people from different countries, different fan bases, and I think there is a lot of positivity. However, there's a massive toxic culture with that, and unfortunately, it impacts the sport a lot. Because sometimes I do look in and I go, do these people actually like watching football? Do they even watch football at all? Or do they just read stats on a spreadsheet and just watch highlights and match of the day? Because let's take Foden, Saka for example, a constant debate that you see on there. These are two of the best English talents we have seen in the last 20, 30 years. Yet they are constantly being put against each other. He's got more goal and assists, he takes more penalties than the other, he plays in a better team. And I think it constantly goes around in circles where, don't get me wrong, I was 14, 15 once and I loved debating my mates at school. But when you see adults constantly debating about this, it just gets mind-numbing. There's a thing going around on social media at the moment saying, where are all the skillers gone? Where's the Ronaldinhos, the JJ Kutchers, the Quaresmas of the world? Why is there no longer creativity in the sport? And one, I think that's wrong. I think there are. I just think it is lesser nowadays. And two, I think it is partly because of social media. Look at Anthony, for example, for Manchester United. I think he is a way overrated player. I don't know how they spent 80, 90 million on him. However, he is one of those what you call a skiller back in the day. He'd have 5-star skills on FIFA. He'd be on all the highlights. But anytime he makes a mistake, he is turned into a meme, isn't it? He does that skill where he roulettes it around himself loads of times when he gets the ball. And yes, it's a ridiculous skill, but if you look back in 10, 15 years, I mean, JJ Kutcher was doing rainbow flicks at the 95th minute of the games. If he was doing that for Man United now, he'd be roasted for it because they're going like, we'll focus on winning.
What does that do for you?
I think unfortunately it's biting the hand that feeds you with that. Ronaldo's early days, even Ronaldo's prime years, he was doing those step overs where he'd do them for 10 minutes, lose the ball, but social media wasn't as prevalent back then, so you didn't see all of his fail compilations. But negativity sells, and nowadays you can get money from engagement on Twitter and TikTok and everything like that, and if you say outlandish opinions that you probably don't even agree with, you get money from it. And that leads us into our next part of the video. Part 2, Talksport mob. Talksport is the best performing radio station in the UK within the sports scene, and it is a very toxic place in my opinion. There's a lot to like about it. Contrary to what a lot of people think, I enjoy the Simon Jordan and Jim White show. I think it is quite informative. They have good guests on there, and yes, there are some ridiculous opinions. The rest of it I really do think is a massive negative space for football. Take Gabby Agbonlahor as a case study. He was an average player, played Premier League for many years, but he went into Talksport, and if you watch him, he doesn't have much behind him. I don't think he reads the game well, he doesn't have great analysis of it, but how did he make a career out of it? He said ridiculous comments on Talksport, on YouTube, and that drives engagement. He had to do a clip where he compared Chelsea players with Leicester players, and at the time, I believe it was 2021-22, he was giving Kovacic versus Dewsbury Hall. Fantastic player for Leicester now. However, at the time, he was a youth player coming onto the scene. Kovacic had played for Inter Milan, Real Madrid, Chelsea, and obviously a better player. And he obviously picked Dewsbury Hall because it got a massive reaction off all the football world, and it put Gabby Agbonlahor, it gave him a viral clip, it pushed him onto a bigger stage. And my problem with this is just ridiculous. You shouldn't get annoyed about clips like this. However, don't pretend you're a proper football analyst. Don't go on Talksport and pretend it's not anything other than entertainment, because you're promoting yourselves as knowledgeable. You're promoting yourself as a pundit who played the game, knows a lot more than the average Joe, when they are just reducing themselves to people who don't really care about furthering conversation in football. They just want to drive clicks to the Talksport website to get more clicks from the adverts. Then that's when it just becomes a bit of a problem. Part 3, the unnecessary ex-player punditry. So since the dawn of time, ex-players have finished their footballing career, hanged the boot up, and then gone on TV to talk about modern football. And there's such a love-hate relationship with this, I think, with everyone. Everyone has opinion on who their favourite pundits are, and it causes a lot of debate because if you're watching football 3, 4 to 5 times a week, you have to hear them speak quite a lot. But I think the problem is, it's when these ex-players are doing it simply for a paycheck. And 2 players I'm going to focus on, Roy Keane and Rio Ferdinand. I love them as players, I think they are 2 of the best ever to play. However, I think they are 2 bang average pundits. And I'll say this because they both played under Ferguson, they both played in some of the most successful teams in the history of the game, and they both played for Man United, who are doing okay at the moment, but since they left, extremely poorly. But the problem is with these 2, and there's a lot of like them, they can't understand why players aren't as good as them. I feel they see football so black and white, and if a centre-back isn't doing what Rio Ferdinand could do, then Rio can't understand why. Likewise with Roy Keane. The problem is with Roy Keane, what he basically says is that they're not trying hard enough, they don't want it enough, they're not focused enough, and that's basically it. And if they do anything well, it's his job.
That's his job.
And I know that's a funny thing, and I do like Roy Keane as a media personality, but I don't like him as a pundit because he doesn't really offer much analysis on the game. Stick to Football, I think, is probably my favourite podcast at the moment because it is 4, 5, 6 ex-footballers talking about their experience within the game, and it's great to hear Gary Neville and Roy Keane going about the other week where they thought the Italian lads in the 90s and 2000s were probably doping because they just couldn't keep up with them. However, a great example was last season when AC Milan played Inter Milan in the semi-final, such a historic occasion, and think about all the English journalists, all the Italian journalists who speak really good English, could have gone on BT Sport and commentated on that game, gave great analysis to the English audience, who 90% of us don't know really anything about what's going on in Italian football because we don't keep up with it as much. But what did BT Sport decide to do? They decided to put Rio Ferdinand on the co-commentary, who offered nothing to the game, and unfortunately I just think TV companies get the lines blurred sometimes where they have a Jamie Carragher, they have a Gary Neville, they have a Thierry Henry maybe, who offers good analysis on the game, but they also can offer some great advice from a former pro. And then I think you have players like a Roy Keane, like a Michael Owen maybe, like a Rio Ferdinand, who don't offer really good analysis at all on the game, but because they have so much credibility and such a loyal fan base, they influence people so much to thinking exactly what they think. But this leads slightly onto football podcasts because I think there are a lot of ex-pros doing a great job on football podcasts at the moment. That might be higher level ones like a Gary Lineker, Alan Shearer, the Stick to Football podcast. But there's some great lower league ones like the Under the Kosh podcast, which gives a bit more rooted, grounded, down-to-earth reality of football. Part 4, the death of Soccer AM. So the final part, if you've ever seen Soccer AM, it is such a cultural phenomenon in England and the UK. And from the 90s to last year, it has been such a good TV show on a Saturday morning on Sky Sports. However, a lot of these shows are dying because of social media, and that's not necessarily a bad thing due to social media. People complain nowadays because it's called Saturday Social. You get football creators from around England and Europe to come on and have debates, pretty basic debates, like I said before, Foden and Saka. And it is again to drive engagement, but it is also to get a younger audience involved. And I think that is a good thing because nowadays kids might not grow up in the same way I did with football. I used to read Match Magazine, I used to watch Soccer AM, but nowadays kids might want to see their favourite YouTubers debate over what Man City player they think should start on the weekend. But unfortunately, due to the death of Soccer AM, it removed a bit of the lightheartedness of football, and it kind of reminded you why you fell in love with football in the first place. It's not just about winning trophies, it's not just about having Haaland score the most goals in the league every season. It's about the fun that comes along with it. And some of the best things on Soccer AM was seeing fans from up and down the country each week coming on, having a laugh with other fans on there, having the Wembley where they had to get it through the hole, or having the Top Bins Challenge, or the Third Eye, or one thing that is missing desperately nowadays is Showboat. Showboat was a bit segment on Soccer AM. They'd stick new music on there, which was really good for up and coming bands, and they do a whole section of players from up and down the Football League in England doing skills, and you'd get to see League 2 players do a great skill that you'd never get to see anyway. But that died because of Twitter, because nowadays if you see someone do a skill in the 5th division of Austrian football, you get to see it instantly because it's going to probably go viral if it's good enough. But the only problem with that is that Twitter has comments and people get to discredit the skill, saying, oh, it was against farmers, it was against this guy, he's not good enough. Whereas on Soccer AM, they just admired the players and the skills they were doing. Unfortunately with this, I think Soccer AM died because the football players who would come on, a lot of the times would have a wooden personality because they've been media trained since the age of 6 from the academies. And I think back in the 90s and the 2000s, when football was a bit more raw, then they'd have a bit more of a laugh on there. Whereas nowadays, it would be robotic questions, whereas you wouldn't really find an answer that you didn't know. But I'm just getting to the point nowadays where I don't feel like the younger generations enjoy football as much as previous ones. And I don't want to sound like the old man here, but you shouldn't just look football through debates and stats and everything like that. You should enjoy watching your favourite teams. And when people take the piss out of other fans for celebrating, not having enough fans at the games, sometimes you just need to focus on what you actually enjoy about football and watch the games instead of just finding something to mock people for. But I do think with football media, there's such good creators in there, there's such good podcasts, there's such good journalists. And I think, for example, I know I go on about The Athletic. I think it's a fantastic platform where real journalism is still going on. I think, unfortunately, because of how things go viral nowadays on Twitter and TikTok, that people are taking advantage of that. And also, part of you go, why not? Because if they're making money off it, then do what you do. But if you're talking about being a credible person in the football media, it's laughable when some of these people pretend they are journalists. But let me know what you think about the state of football media in the UK. I think it's got fantastic points, but I also think it's got a toxic culture, which I think ruins a lot of the game sometimes. But if you like this video, if you could leave a like and subscribe to the channel, that'd be muchly appreciated. And if you leave a comment, like I said, that'd be great. But thanks for watching.